Every third bite of food we eat comes as a result of bees and other pollinators. Not only do they pollinate 130 fruits and vegetable crops, but they also pollinate the food for animals we eat and use for dairy products. They also pollinate about 80% of food in grocery stores. Bees pollinate alfalfa, which is the main food source for cattle. With the lack of bees would come less food for cattle and less protein sources for people. It would also damage the meat industry.
And they pollinate alfalfa. And if you feed hay to cattle, it affects the dairy industry. So without bees, you don't have alfalfa, and it severely affects the meat and dairy industries. So bees are huge pollinators, and they impact our food quality and food security in major ways.
Many beekeepers find it difficult to find areas to keep their bees because people are hesitant to let beekeepers work near their homes. So have you noticed your bees' population getting smaller?
Yes, they die. The die rate is huge. I heard this winter it was 80% of all hives in Massachusetts died.
Jeez.
What happens in the winter? It's not the cold. Bees can take cold, no problem. As long as they have enough honey on, when it warms up a little bit, they go up and eat, and they're fine.
Yeah.
And when it's really cold, they just stay locked together. And but it's when they're all congregated tight, any virus that the hive has can just wipe them out because they're all real close together. The bees in the winter, there's one queen and they form a ball around her, and they need to keep her at 90 degrees. Wow. That's unbelievable, right? It's 0 outside and they want to keep her 90, and so they kind of take turns and they die off. There's a lot of die off, over the winter. Yeah. The ones on the outside of the ball die, and then they move as a ball up, eating honey, and then hopefully by the time there's flowers and stuff ready for spring, they haven't eaten all their honey, right? Now they can go and make it anew. So it's a big game for beekeepers to try to make sure there's enough on, and you can do emergency feedings. You go out with sugar and feed them, trying to get them through to the first flowers.
Yeah.
Which are all your little crocuses and your dandelions, all the little things that come up. You should look. There could be 2 or 3 bees at a time just trying to get some nectar.
A crab like varroa mite has recently come to scientists' attention because it feasts on the blood of bees and has been causing drastic damage to colonies.
Varroa itself doesn't kill the bees, but what it does is it spreads viruses. What varroa does is a great vector. It feeds on one bee and then spreads the virus to the next bee and the next bee, and then the viruses kill the colony. Honeybees can no longer survive without human beings, which is a really interesting thing. That because we've managed to spread these diseases around the world and continue to do so, if we're not here, they're not here, which is a really strange relationship. We were always dependent on them for the pollination they did, but they're now dependent on us as well.
The varroa mite highly complicates the beekeeping process because it is up to the beekeepers to get rid of the 8 or 9 mites that can populate each individual cell in the hive. A new type of insecticide called neonicotinoids is known to cause acute poisoning to not just one bee but to an entire colony.
One are pesticides. There's a new class of chemicals called neonicotinoids. Now, they have an impact on bee nervous systems. They have navigation problems, they have flying problems, and it seems to kill them in large numbers.
Unlike the US, in Europe and Australia, where the health of insects and humans is deemed more important than the corporate profit, they have passed laws to ban insecticide use, which in large part has largely saved the bee populations from declining there. Colony collapse disorder is a syndrome defined as a dead colony with no adult bees or dead bee bodies, but with a live queen and usually honey and immature bees still present. Without the presence of eligible adult male bees, reproduction is impossible. It is suspected that the colonies collapse due to the varroa mite or other viruses.
Colony collapse disorder is the main reason for the bees' decrease in population, because it is essentially a result of all of the other factors.
Another factor causing their decline is the use of high fructose corn syrup as food. Beekeepers will feed the colonies this instead of their own honey so that they can harvest more honey for profit. This leaves no honey for the bees to eat during the long winter. Also, the high fructose corn syrup does not give their immune system enough strength to fight disease.
Create a bee watering station by finding a bowl and filling it with water. Add rocks to it so that the bees can land and take a drink without drowning.
If you see a bee on the ground that isn't moving, it is probably tired from carrying pollen around and needs to be re-energized. Mix some water with a little sugar in a spoon and lay it down by the bee. This will give the bee the energy it needs to fly back to its colony.
It's called a hive tool.
Hive tool.
What does that do?
So hives are made of boxes, right? So these type of things, and and you stack them up, and so it's called a frame. a frame.
And that's where
And
honey, and you scrape it.
yeah, and frames start out empty.
Oh, do they make these? The honeycomb thing?
This is pressed wax. Okay. Some people don't put any wax; they just put a frame in. But most people put. Feel that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you feel that it's very thin, right?
Okay, did you know that every third bite of food you take is because of honeybees and other pollinators?
No, I did not know.
You didn't know that?
No.
Okay. Did you know that every third bite of food you eat is because of a honeybee and other pollinators?
I did not know that, no.
Other pollinators.
No, I didn't.
Every third bite I eat is because of honeybees and...
Other pollinators.
No, I didn't know that.
Did you know that $15 billion every year of crops are caused by bees and their pollination?
No. I didn't know that. That's a lot of money.
Guess how many types of fruits and vegetables come from bee pollination?
5.
130. How many types of fruits and vegetables do you think that bees pollinate?
4.
130.
103.
130.
Oh.
Guess how many types? I'm sure hundreds.
Yes, 130.
130. Okay.
Yes.
10.
130. 130.
Save the bees.
Save the bees.
Save the bees.
Save the bees.
Save the bees. We're not going to eat fruit and vegetables otherwise. We won't have pollination.
Yes.